Now, in this lesson, what I like to do is discuss a very, very incredible book, which has become a required reading at many medical schools across the US and across the world. And that book is The Spirit Catches You and You Fall Down, a Hmong Child, Her American Doctors, and the Collision of Two Cultures. Anne Fadiman, based at Yale, wrote this book after 9 years of being in the field. In the field, in terms of this book, meant 9 years in UC Merced, or at least Merced, California, at the hospital there, where there was a case she heard about that was causing a lot of discussions to take place around what was appropriate for the Hmong refugees. The Hmong refugees, Hmong spelled Hmong, are a hill tribe in what's called the Golden Triangle of Vietnam. And in the United States, after the war in Vietnam, giving amnesty to refugees to allow them to settle in the United States and giving citizenship upon arrival, the Hmong peoples were among them. This story has to do with one such family, but we find out the beliefs of their culture around wellness and around illness shape the experiences they have as they come into contact with different conceptions of wellness and illness vis-a-vis their American doctors who are trying to treat their daughter. So why are they trying to treat their daughter? Well, first of all, the daughter is the youngest out of 9 children. Leah Lee is her name. And Leah Lee's elder sister, next in line, the 8th child, Yer, slammed a door one day. And when Leah was very, very young, incredibly young, she fell into an epileptic seizure, what the doctors diagnosed as an epileptic seizure. Now, for those of us who have had some exposure to Western medical diagnoses and treatments, we might be aware that there's a certain way to treat epilepsy according to Western biomedical treatments and diagnoses. But in the Hmong system, an epileptic seizure is an indication that the individual might have a special basis for being able to heal others. It's almost a sign of, when I say almost, I mean it's one of the signs of someone who could become a shaman or shaman, depending on your pronunciation. So a healer in the Hmong culture. Anne Fadiman encountered some shamans when she was in Merced, and she became very, very close with this family, and incredibly close with the family, such that when she was ill and her husband became ill, and her 2 children became ill, this family, the Lee family, Lee, took care of her. They were part of her wedding, part of her birthing process as she gave birth to 2 children. I mean, her life was intertwined with the friendship she had with the Lee family. She wanted to understand what was going on and how to be of service in terms of making people aware of the difference, the cultural difference of biomedicine and indigenous medicines, indigenous cultures, and their healing traditions, their medicine traditions. This book has become required reading in many medical schools because the kind of sensitivity that is generated by the style of Anne Fadiman's writing, the kind of cultural sensitivity, the kind of medical cultural sensitivity, or the cultural sensitivity that you would have in a medical or a healing or an illness or wellness setting is very powerful. It connects with the reader. It connects with the reader on a very emotional level, a visceral level, and, if you don't mind me saying, an artistic level, because Anne Fadiman is not just a storyteller, she's a poet. And the way she writes about the family and their encounter with the medical system, and the way she writes about her own encounters with the family, are uncommon. The skills she uses as somebody who can write well, and that's an understatement, help us to understand better what her experiences are like, what this Hmong family's experiences are like, what the doctor's experiences are like. Because everyone is trying to heal this girl, but they have different conceptions, different diagnoses of her illness, and different conceptions of wellness, what will make her better. The family does not want the physicians at the local hospital to administer any needle into Leah's skin, because that can cause soul loss. In many traditions, soul loss is an incredibly significant, I don't want to use the word ailment. Soul loss is tragic. I don't know what the indigenous word in Hmong is for soul. I don't remember it. But it's as powerful and as important as it sounds. To lose one's soul is everything, right? And I don't want to sound alarmist or make it sound like this book is unappealing to read because it's scary, because as you might guess, events happen whereby Leah Lee's soul is in jeopardy. And there are physicians who are medical anthropologists or anthropologically trained medical physicians, and they try to give some advice. There's a social worker who's very sensitive to the families. Her name is Janine. She's very sensitive to what the family is going through, and she tries to be an intermediary. She tries to establish interventions so that the family is experiencing less of a communication gap and less fear as they come into contact with their American doctors, with their daughter's American doctors. If you can only imagine that the child who they consider to be the most special is most in jeopardy of being harmed by the Americans who gave them asylum, who gave them a home as refugees, to come from their war-torn country to America, but only then to be in harm's way just by virtue of people who are trying to act in caring ways, but not understanding where the gap in cross-cultural communication lies. So there's two projects I want to do with regard to this particular book and this story. One project is to march along the page and show you how Anne Fadiman writes about the family at this cross-cultural nexus of communication gap by using sound. Now, this is a course on music and health and wellness. So to write about sound experiences across cultures, you might think is difficult. How would I do that? Would I write about the sound of a non-Western musical instrument, or would I write about the sound of an exotic voice? Exotic in quotes, right? Inverted commas. How would one write about sound across cultures? Well, Anne Fadiman begins with the voice. She begins with the voice. And she does it in a way that is uncommon, it's very special, and it deserves our academic curiosity and our intellectual curiosity and our attention. It, I would say, really demands our attention, because the way I'm going to read this with you is to model for you a type of writing, a style of writing that you might want to consider trying on. Whenever I've done this in my classes, guided them through the preface of 2.5 pages of this book, they come away understanding what it means to connect by writing in such a way as we see here. One can tell a story clinically with dispassionate removal of all adjectives and descriptions, or if one really wants to reach the heart of an audience, the hearts and minds of an audience, one uses description in such a way as to move people, to paint a scene such that one feels one is there. So when I guide us through this, I'd like you to keep in mind that you can write like this. It takes time. And don't be, please don't be, let me put it that way, let me put a please in front. Don't be intimidated or jealous. Don't let those parts of your mind and heart be activated in a very serious way. Try to cue your admiration and your emulation. How can I emulate this author's style? You know, we're not going to wake up tomorrow and be Wordsworth. We're not going to be Farley Mowat. We're not going to be W.O. Mitchell, Anne Monroe, Alice Munro rather, or, one of the great Canadian authors we all know well and love. It's not going to happen overnight, unless you yourself are watching this, in which case, by all means, you are who you are. But those of us who are humbled by beautiful poetry and beautiful writing, especially writing about music, may find here something that you can draw upon. Because to describe musical experiences in a way that moves people is going to be important, I think, in this course. You can use this tool. This is a tool. And we'll encounter narratology and narrative medicine, which is part of Rita Sharon's intervention that she came up with in Columbia University, which was part of the discipline, the inception of the discipline of medical humanities. So consider that this falls under the rubric, under the umbrella of medical humanities, that it is a type of narrative medicine, not exactly as Rita Sharon has conceived of it, but if to have narratives that explain wellness and illness, then yes, this falls under the umbrella of narrative medicine. And yet the sensorium meaning all the senses, sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, all of these are part of the palette with which the author can write. You, the author, can write about sound experiences and about medical and health and wellness experiences. It's because we try to, as human beings, explain in language what we mean, that we need to have teachers like Anne Fadiman who can model for us what we want to say, what we'd like to be able to say. So, although it's not easy, it's learnable, it's doable. And I want to encourage you to enjoy this next segment as I take us through this book and pay attention to almost every word. Okay? Here we go.